Welcome back to the Observe Day podcast, where we explore the meaning behind the days we observe and the deeper stories that shape them. September is National Suicide Prevention Month, a time to shine a light on a subject that touches so many lives, but is too often spoken about in whispers. My guest today is Grace Ogren, a clinical research specialist at recovery.com and a lived experience advocate. Grace has walked through her own journey with depression, suicidality, and recovery, and she now dedicates her life to advancing research and resources that make a difference for others. She's also a writer who channels creativity into healing and meaning making. Today we'll talk about how recovery looks like, what recovery looks like in real life, why creativity can be such a powerful tool for hope, and how we can all play a role in suicide prevention. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. September is Suicide Prevention Month. What does this month mean to you personally and professionally?
Personally, I would say it's it's a reminder in a sense, kind of in a bad way, honestly, but mostly it's hopeful for me. I would say it's more of a reminder of how I came through those struggles. And it's also a reminder of just the severity of it too, and how I know it affected my life, but these type of things like this awareness makes me more aware of the fact that it affects so many other lives beyond mine, either as someone experiencing it or being like a loved one of someone who is experiencing suicidality and depression. So personally, it's that combination of like hope, and then it's kind of sombering too, because it's a issue that has not ended for so many people, and including myself. It's not over for me, but I'm very hopeful in treatment and how I've come through it. And then professionally, it's something that we do call attention to here. We are presenting actually next month. Me and my boss, who's a psychologist, we're presenting at a crisis conference in Wisconsin. So we're talking about suicidality, and specifically chronic suicidality, and the difference in treatment for that, and what conditions are usually linked to chronic suicidality. So it's a good month to be talking about this topic, and we're getting a lot of interest in that presentation on chronic suicidality. So it's an issue that we're definitely seeing people are very aware of in the treatment space, and that providers are wanting to understand more about it. And when I am up there, I am giving my lived experience, and my boss, as a psychologist, she is contributing a lot clinically. And so we make a good team, I think, doing both the clinical side and then my lived experience. So it is a big month for me, both personally and professionally. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you wish more people understood about depression and suicidality? That's the first time I'm hearing of that word.
I think so for depression, I wish more people knew that it wasn't just being sad, that there's a very, very big difference. Sad is like an emotion that's normal and healthy, and depression is like something in your brain is not right. And there's the effect it has on your life is completely different for each one. And I think that's where a lot of the stigma comes from, is people think depression is just being sad. And so they're like, well, get over it. Or why can't you, just not understanding why and how it can limit what you're able to do, either limit your like mental capacity for just problem solving and thinking, and then limit like getting out of bed for some people. And so I think that I would like people to know that it is a true like condition. It's not just a emotion, and it affects all areas of life, my experience. And for suicidality, I would want people to know, I think mainly that you can talk about it, that it does not get better in silence, and silence doesn't protect anybody. I think there's this idea that if you talk to someone, if you ask directly, like, are you feeling suicidal? It can like put the idea in their mind, but that's been disproven clinically. And I can say from my own experience too that actually helps. Like, I want to talk about it and I want to feel safe enough to talk about it with people. And that silence can, in my experience, it really like confirmed my beliefs where I thought no one was going to help me or be able to help me, and like no one cared. And so that silence kind of, worsened all of that. And so I would say, yeah, you can talk about it and you're not going to put the idea in someone's mind. And how talking about it can be the first step to getting treatment. So
For many people, they don't know what to say or do when someone they love is struggling. And as you talked about, you can't talk about it. Most persons, the reason why they don't even show up to talk about it, or even say, discuss the topic, is they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, right? You don't know what to say, right? And they're like, okay, what do I say? I don't know. Should I say this? What do I tell them? So, what's one thing you want to tell those persons?
it makes me think of a quote that a coworker of mine posted. Is something to the effect of saying something is basically better than nothing, better than silence. But yeah, there is, like, how do you know what to say? That's a very almost you would have no way of knowing unless you have experience with this or you seek it out. So I think what I would say is just expressing care. Like, you don't have to have a solution at all. You don't have to have advice. I think it's just to say, I hear you and I'm here. Um, and then there's, of course, you want to assess risk too. If someone expresses that they're suicidal, you don't want to just give them a pat on the back and leave. So, um, assessing risk, you can again ask bluntly and directly about that. Like, do you have a plan? Do you have ways to enact it? And if they say yes, that probably means you need to stay with them until they can get into some type of care or get a plan worked out. But if someone just expresses in general, like, I'm feeling either maybe really depressed or thinking about hurting myself or something, and they don't have a plan, just that care. And I think before, when you're talking about the silence, to not be silent and to talk about it and say, how does that feel, or what do you think caused that? And just to
Yeah.
go deeper into it and actually talk about it is, I think people don't realize how helpful that can be and how seen it can make the other person feel, just to have someone be open to talking about it in any sense.
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observe Day newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind the scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Thank you so much for that. One of the things I want for you to touch on concerning what you just said is that you mentioned asking them if they suicidal, right? And I feel right, and I could be wrong, but people don't want to, especially probably maybe this in this part of the world. Maybe that might be different from the US, but there's a lot of stigma about wanting to commit suicide, you're weak, you're not, and all those things, right? And so a lot of times when people have suicidal thoughts, it's not something they go around telling people. Even though when you ask, "Why are you suicidal?" sometimes they even laugh, right? They smile like, "Oh yeah, I used to say that." Like, oh, like, right? And except of course it's a friend and they're really 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 close, that's when they open up. So in that regards, when we ask and they could lie to us. So how do we, beyond just them telling us yes or no, how do we really know what's going on, right? Other than them say, because if we leave them telling us yes or no, a lot of things could go really 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 bad because
Yeah, I think then for that, you'd need to kind of pivot to watching their behaviors instead of trusting what they say, but to watch what they're doing. There's like a list of behaviors people typically do when they're suicidal, and these, I don't personally do all of them. I do a few of them, but it's made me more aware of what to look for. And I think it depends a lot on the actual person and how well you know them and your
Yeah.
relationship to them. But I feel like if you think something is off, then it probably is. And if they're even making jokes about it or making more jokes about it, and doing things like giving stuff away, talking about the future like it's uncertain or not something they're planning on doing. Like for me, that was college. I just didn't plan on going. And I think just general, like their affect, like do they seem down? They probably are. And if they're making these type of jokes more frequently, that was something I did. I made those jokes a lot about like killing myself or something. And it was kind of almost like a game for me because I was like, oh, I actually mean this, but people don't realize.
Yeah.
So I think it's watching behaviors and even the reaction to being asked about directly about do you have plans or would you ever it can be telling, but it's tricky to know. I don't think you
Yeah.
could say for sure you'll ever be able to know if they don't tell you, and that's something that I kind of did. Either just wouldn't tell people and I would hide it, and I think at that point you need a mental health professional, but yeah, it's tricky to even get people to want to do that. So, but just observance and a lot of just gauging reactions and that gut feeling of if something's wrong. If you think something's wrong, it probably is.
Thank you so much for sharing with us some of the signs. Yeah. Grace, you've been open about your own journey with depression and suicide. I'm using the word again, suicidality. What helps you begin to regain hope?
Um, to regain hope, I think it was actually getting treatment, and it wasn't because it was like helping me. Actually, it was just the fact that I was taking a step forward towards something different. You know, it wasn't really about I started therapy and I started feeling better because of therapy. It was like I started this and just the fact that I was trying gave me hope. And I was in treatment programs that were more long lasting. So I was like, once I get into this program, I kind of got some hope because I was thinking I'm going to be here for a couple weeks and there's a lot of time for this to get better. It's not
Yeah.
like a one shot type of thing. And trying all types of treatment, like I've done ketamine treatment. And even it was the same idea where it wasn't even necessarily that the treatment worked. It was just the fact that I had tried. Um, and for me, it's also been my family. They have always like kept hope and they've kept the belief that things can get better. Um, and so in the really dark, down times, I've always kind of kept some little bit of hope because I just think, well, if they believe it, then maybe it's true. So that, and then one final thing is for me, I wrote a letter to myself when I started feeling better, and it was basically just, it will get better. And that is what gives me hope too when I just reflect on my experiences and my journey with this. It's like it has gotten bad, but it has always gotten better. Like I've had a lot of downs, but I always have an up, and that's just never not been true. So that gives me hope.
Well, you study areas like chronic suicidality, ER visits, and treatment outcomes. From your research, where do you see the biggest gaps in mental health care today?
I think from both experience and the research, it's like that initial getting people into treatment. There can be, um, like for me, when I reached out for help, it took a week to just get a call back. And then it took another week to get into a program. So there's this, I guess, overwhelm is what we're seeing. And then what I'm feeling and felt is there's just not enough help to go around. There's a lot of people who are
Yeah.
asking for help and reaching out. And then it's like, well, so have 100 other people in the last week. So there's a wait list. And with chronic suicidality in particular, there's a lot of kind of misunderstanding, I guess, of how to approach it in a sense. And I think it makes a lot of providers nervous because they having patients who are suicidal is like a risk for them, and they just want you to not be suicidal. Yeah, I think it's a big emotional load for providers to have patients who are chronically suicidal. So that's why we chose that topic also for our research and what we've been presenting on. And it's kind of like there's a learning curve almost to uh, when suicidality is recurrent, kind of constant, and how you switch up from crisis care to like management of it as a symptom. And that you do that when it's not an acute crisis, they don't have an active plan.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of manage it like you would manage other symptoms of depression. So I think, the main gaps are the time it takes to get into treatment. There's just not enough to go around. And I think what can address that is virtual treatment. It's not like ideal, but especially if you're in a rural area, which is where I lived when I was going through my low period as well. It's an option, at least, it's something. And the other gap is, just knowing how to navigate suicidality without viewing like going to the ER or going to the hospital as the only treatment option when there isn't an acute crisis. So that's what we're trying to bridge with our research and our presentation that we are taking around the US.
Thank you so much for itemizing those gaps. Creativity and writing plays a role in your healing. I mean, you said it in your profile. How do you use fiction to process trauma and pain?
One of the first ways that I used it was when I was going through my first like episode of very severe depression. I wanted a girl my age to go through something worse than what I was going through and to see her get through it. And that's what led me to write my first book. And I found it to be where I can't really journal. Like that doesn't necessarily click for me. But if I translate it into a character going through something hard or something, not even like depression or suicidality, but just something hard, something that they don't think they can get through, or the odds are stacked against them. And because to write out the solution, you have to be very aware of all the parts of it and all the beliefs that characters have before like going through it and coming out of it. And so I think that's been the most therapeutic for me, is putting characters in a really tough situation and just seeing how they get through it, and to have that control, like as the writer, figuring out how they're going to get through it and how they're going to react to things. It gives me a sense of closure for some stuff that I've gone through related to depression and otherwise. And I found it to be so like a very different experience than journaling. I've never really been able to get into journaling, but having someone else go through something hard and being in control of how they navigate it it just helps me get perspective, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. Oh, for someone who's going through their own version of darkness, what would you say to someone listening right now who feels stuck in the darkness?
Would say you need to kind of buckle down and keep going. Like there's kind of nothing else. It all boils down to just keep going. And to someone in that really dark spot, I know that is the hardest thing you can do. It's the most painful thing you can do and like discouraging thing, because it feels like there's one way out, and I could do it, and it's right there. And you have to not do that, and you have to keep going. And that's really hard. So that's why I say like, buckle down, like, get locked in, like you just have to make it to the next day and then do that again and again. And it will get better if you get through it. It'll get better. Like if you keep taking it, even second by second, it will get better. Like that's That's how it works in a sense. So I would say, yeah, I don't really have anything like fluffy, I guess to say, but like it is really hard, and so you have to like stand your ground basically and keep going, and then it is worth it. It's really hard, but I've never felt that it's not worth it, and I've been through it a few times, so I've always been very glad that I kept going, even though it was very hard.
Thank you so much, Grace, for that piece of advice and a
Yeah.
word of encouragement for the listeners.
Yeah.
Um, what are some small but powerful things that has made recovery sustainable for you?
I've changed my diet. That has helped. I've started the keto diet, and there's been studies on that helping for depression, and so I tried it. It's not, I guess, necessarily small, but in comparison to other
Yeah,
types of treatment, it's just a lifestyle change. So that's been helping. And I mentioned before that I wrote a letter to myself. Um, I would really recommend that as something very small you can do, but it's available to you, and kind of forever. But just to, like, I wrote down, it does get better basically, and when that comes from yourself and not someone who doesn't know you, that doesn't know your exact situation and whatnot, it feels like it has a lot more like weight to it, and I can believe it more. And then also just what I've done this time around is I've been more open about what's been happening with me. And so that has allowed basically other people to be able to support me. And it's it's small in theory, but it has had really big effects for me and has helped a lot. I used to live in a very rural area and now I'm in a city. So there is actually people that can support me, and I've got more friends and coworkers. So just to be just slightly more open about it. I don't say
yeah,
everything and I don't tell everyone, but yeah, having that support, just them knowing even what has happened and what's going on, has felt like a big support for me.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. Where can listeners learn more about you and connect with you?
They can learn more about me. I've got an author page on recovery.com. If you find it's called a resource hub. It's just got articles, and I've written quite a few there. I have a website, it's graceogren.com, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. And yeah,
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Grace.
yeah,
Thank you for
thank you for
sharing your
having me.
story, and thank you
Yeah.
for answering all my questions.
Hmm. They're good questions. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, that means a lot to me. I would add all the links she mentioned to the description and the show notes so listeners can click and go directly to the site.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of the Observe Day podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who would love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.